everyone, and welcome back to this episode of the Human Factor Security Podcast, Tin Foil Hack Club Lockdown Diary. And I'd like to welcome my guests, Phil Ingram, MBE.
Hi, Jenny.
And Ian Thornton Chum. Hi, Ian.
Hey, how you doing, Jenny?
I'm good. I have a sort of a tinfoil hat.
Yes.
Yeah, I decided that as it's not hat weather anymore, because of what's outside, I go for the tinfoil umbrella.
Well, I think it's very extra, Phil.
Not great in lightning storms, Phil, but otherwise a pretty good option to keep the mind control rays at bay.
Hey, I need something to zap the energy in me quickly. So let's get these storms around.
And Ian, you look like a hipster. You're looking very well with your Kangol beret.
Thank you. Yeah, about 3 more years until I transition to international recording and producer of EDM and hip hop. But I'm still in InfoSec for the next little while. So just trying out the new look,
So, can I start by asking you then, if you're in InfoSec, have you had your IQ tested lately?
It was in the upper 190s. So I'm pretty proud of that achievement.
Yeah, but I have to ask is, have you deleted 85% of all of the password data that you've got for everything that's out there so that you can only have 15%? That's a requirement as well.
Yeah, I don't believe in, kind of crippling my own Uber hacking skills by merely only having 15% of the password. I find that most of the passwords I need are all online anyways, so.
But it was a lot, obviously from the industry, there's been a lot of commentary on this, people saying everything from this is just plain stupid to this is so inaccurate to the fact that he said there was nothing scarier than
they don't get it. The entire
guy.
InfoSec industry didn't understand what was said because it was in code. And the whole point of this was to basically dismiss the 50-page indictment against the Russians that was released by the Department of Justice a mere 24 hours before Trump gets on the air in front of a microphone. Quite now, Trump could say anything. You could take 30 or so random words in the English language. He could say those words, and the crowds would roar and spread COVID amongst themselves. But
it falls into the same bracket as you're using bleach to try and ingesting bleach to try and deal with COVID. He said that before the campaign properly started. So
the roars of the adoration of the crowd,
when he said nobody gets hacked, of course the first thing that I thought was exactly what everyone thought was that this is just Trump being Trump, and he just says these things that don't make any sense, as Ian rightly says. But then I did think about, well, what is he saying this so that he's going to be, so that you can't say that something is hacked?
It's interesting when you put it into the wider context of the election and everything that's going on, and the very large percentage numbers that are coming out of those that have early voted. And now, isn't it interesting that he's bringing up something about hacking and then at the same time, there's just been some Russians from the GR Unit 74455 indicted for various crimes around the world. His administration is setting the ground out perfectly for there to be some form of excuse as to why he lost, or to explain why he won.
It goes deeper than this. So if you look at, and Phil, jump in on this one. If you look at the Trump presidency, it was a giant influence operation from the very beginning. Yeah. Okay. And you have to see it in that context, the 10,000 or so lies that Trump has told over the last 4 years of his presidency, right? The idea that there is a big lie made up of all of these little lies to be anti-science, to move forward his agenda, which is only enriching the billionaire donors that have been part of the Trump junta, because I don't think we can really actually even call it a government anymore. And you're right, Jenny. He's laying the groundwork for to say that the democratic process in the United States is corrupt, the invention of the fake ballots, the fact that his own Department of Justice is releasing, and his own other government agencies are warning about influence operations from not just Russia, but a number of different countries. Normally in an election cycle, you see government departments go quiet in terms of press releases. The tradition is that they don't want to involve themselves in political. What we're seeing with the Department of Justice release 2-3 weeks before the election is a very political act. And this is because he then got up and suggested that Joe Biden was a criminal and that he should be locked up, which is exactly what thug dictators do to opposition party members. So the playbook that is going on here is, you know, Phil, you must be able to see the similarities between Russian and authoritarianism.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's absolutely fascinating. Everyone puts it down to stupid comments and isn't he daft and all the rest of it, but actually, the Russians have got a doctrine for this, and it's clear that he studied it and his team studied it. And the doctrine is called maskirovka, which is masking. And it's all about putting disinformation out there. And whenever you're running any campaign, and he's clearly got some good planners behind it, because when you're running a military campaign, you prepare the ground with a deep operation. So, in military terms, you're using your artillery to try and make sure that the enemy defenses are defeated, and you're using your air power to do that, and you're dropping leaflets on people saying, run away quickly because we're going to come with our big spears and deal with you. He's doing that at the minute with the electorate, but he's doing that as people are doing the postal votes. And then what we're going to see, I'm fairly certain, is a ramping up of different targeted attacks, because what he's doing at the moment is he's sending little probing messages out to see what is going to get the sort of, and it's not just the audience that supports him, it's what is sitting with the audience that is the undecided that's there. Because you look at the votes, and I'm surprised there's such a small percentage between them in the polls. But there's definitely maskirovka going on. There's definitely preparing the ground with a deep operation that's going on, and probing. That probing you can see, and that's very clever. That takes an awful lot of planning, and an awful lot of confidence from an organization that's hedging its bets and that sort of stuff. But the Russians do it all the time.
That's the only explanation for his sudden turn on Fauci, right? And his sudden decision that Fauci made the wrong calls. That the problem with COVID, really, he tried to put that on the desk of Fauci, and at the same time saying that the American people are tired of COVID, with all indications that COVID is an ongoing critical concern for the United States at this point, as both Europe and the UK and the United States start to enter the second wave of infections. So
and geopolitically, it suits the two greatest enemies that there are to the free democracy that were mentioned by the new MI5 director, Russia and China. It suits them to have an unpredictable, unstable leader in the US in governing and influencing the free world, because the free world is then focused on what is he going to do next? How do we protect ourselves from that? Look at how he's fixed Angela Merkel from Germany, and therefore by doing that has fixed the EU. Which if US and EU got together, they would form a trading bloc that would smash China and Russia out of the water. But it's within both Russia and China's interest for there to be that level of instability politically and economically coming out of the West. Russia's exploiting it for territorial purposes, for nationalistic purposes, as we've seen in eastern Ukraine, as we've seen in the Crimea, as we're seeing elsewhere, as the influence into Syria. Xi Jinping is being very quiet, and he's sitting there smiling all the way to the bank. And what else do we see this week? An over 4% growth in Chinese economy. In the digital world, we're seeing whilst China's banning cryptocurrencies in through China, they've just launched the digital yuan. Nobody's looked at the influence of US pension funds in through and the cash holdings from those pension funds in through the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, of which there's a huge investment that's in there. Why is China focusing on Hong Kong? It's getting a lot of control over the US dollar, whilst it's bringing in the digital yuan, whilst it's bringing in new blockchain management regulations for all companies that are coming to work in China. At the same time, China's got its territorial interests into the South China Seas with the Paracel and Spratly Islands, but it's taking people's eyes off that by flying bombers and stuff at Taiwan, so that people are focused on that whilst it's building its islands and everything else. The very, very clever play going on globally by both Putin and Xi Jinping, and we're not seeing it because we're focused on what's Trump going to do next? What's happening in Brexit? Oh, is Brexit actually a priority? We haven't even heard it mentioned in PM questions for the last 3, 4, 5 weeks. The leader of the opposition is focused on what the NHS in England has done, not wider UK issues, and because Brexit should be first and foremost in that, because that's going to affect everyone.
But it's
in a
so
big,
classic,
big way.
Phil, though, isn't it? If you want to distract the enemy from a long-term strategy, give them short-term problems to deal with, and focus on something. You can put that umbrella down if it's in your hand. It's just got to feel like, oh, that's a classic strategy, military strategy, and
it is. As I put the umbrella down, I'm going to shove COVID on in the background.
There we go.
Then
Because it's not
easier.
frightening at all. Let me just talk a little bit about exactly what we're talking about here about Unit 74455, because President Trump said nobody gets hacked on Monday in Tucson, Arizona. Same day that the US charged 6 Russian hackers over the global attacks that hit the Novichok probe in the UK, and also the French elections and the Winter Olympics. So these 6 people are on the FBI's most wanted list. And I just took some notes from some of the stuff that I was reading, which will flash up a little bit here. But they are allegedly the same hackers as targeted the US elections, also accused of hacking Portland down at the time when they were investigating the Novichok attack on the Skripals, Phil. So
I'll correct us out on that. It was the team that was going into the OPCW, and they were actually arrested in the car park outside the OPCW with some very sophisticated Wi-Fi hacking kit in the boot of their car. It's very interesting that, and then when they were taken away and interrogated, one was found with a ticket from GRU headquarters out to the station, or something like that in his pocket.
Okay.
But it was the Dutch authorities that arrested them. However, it was, I'm fairly certain, on the back of British intelligence.
I mean, it's just the thing is the UK have taken this very seriously, and we've accused them of reconnaissance against the 2020 Olympics. Even before COVID, before they were postponed. I wondered, what reconnaissance do you think they're doing? They said that they were OSINT, Ian, as well, on particularly logistics companies involved in the staging of the games in Tokyo, which sounds very ominous indeed, and also making a concerted effort to disguise themselves as Chinese or Korean hackers. So just to finish up on that group, and also I was just going to say as well that they are expert spearfishers apparently, so it's not just technical.
Well, that's the reason. That's one of the ways that they're doing a lot of the reconnaissance. They're using fishing, spearfishing, whale fishing, every form of fishing technique.
I looked proud then. I wasn't really.
to try and see if there are ways in. And this is very Russian, because you have to remember that the Russians have been excluded from international athletics and international sport now for I think it's 8 years. And a lot of Russians, even from the London Olympics, were asked to hand their medals back again because there has been evidence that the International Athletics Association has accepted of the Russian anti-doping agency's data not being as accurate as it should have been, and let's put it that way, and therefore they've been banned. And what Russia wants to do is, again, in the Maskirovka, the disinformation bit, is to try and create as much noise around the outside so that anything that comes up from the Russian activity gets lost in that noise. And if you remember, they released Mo Farah's medical records, which showed that he'd missed 1 or 2 attempts to take samples from him, and they tried to make a big thing about that. At the same time, Chris Froome and other Tour de France winners had their medical data released, and you're seeing a campaign of that, and that's specifically related to the Olympics and the international sport. And again, the GRU, which is Russia's oldest intelligence agency, it's their military intelligence agency. It's been going since the Russian Revolution. It is the executive arm of operations, and it's got the special forces, the Spetsnaz, as part of it, but it's also got the aggressive cyber capability and electronic warfare capability and signals intelligence capability in there. It's got an aggressive information operations capability that the other two agencies that are there traditionally don't, because they're more affiliated with the old diplomatic ways of doing things and looking at either internal security in the same way that MI5 does, or external security through embassies and through traditional agent running and all the rest of it in the same way that sort of MI6 does. But we've got nothing like the GRU, who are this all-powerful executive arm that I don't think anyone's got an equivalent to it.
Ian?
So the reconnaissance phase is exactly what it is. It's looking at what could we do to disrupt this event should we get orders from the big guy that the event shall be disrupted. Because don't forget, what Phil said is really right. You know, the Russians have all sorts of different capabilities in this one department. One of the biggest problems is perhaps being a flunky of Vladimir Putin's and being a little too over enthusiastic in terms of the disruption. You know, and accidentally on purpose spraying Novichok into the ventilation system or what have you, because you thought the boss might like that. You know, you have to understand it from their mentality that they are like Labrador retrievers that are trying to please the master, and they will, you know, overreach, I would say, and estimate, you know, the level of disruption the boss actually wanted. So I think in the conversations with Vladimir Putin, he's going to say, you know, a 10 out of 10 being like smuggling a covert nuclear weapon into a country, and a 1 out of 10 being an Nmap scan of the infrastructure. I think, you know, he's got to kind of tell his forces what he wants, you know, to accomplish. And so, you know, one of the things that I fear about Russia is it seems to have no scruples in terms of what is on the board or off the board. And to be honest, Phil, was not the attack on civilians with a chemical nerve agent in the UK, on UK soil, did you not feel that the government response from that could be described as tepid at best?
Oh, well, the government response and the international response was tepid. And the interesting thing was that, and here's where Vladimir Putin is trying to recover from it, because, you know, from his perspective, the initial operation against Sergei Skripal worked perfectly. He didn't necessarily need to kill him because he was sending a message that he could do nasty things to different people around the world, and this was exactly 14 days before his re-election in the presidential election. So he wanted that message out there. The thing that went wrong for him, and this is where I agree with you with the puppy dogs overextending their remit, was, you know, he gave the GRU agents who came and did it a free hand to go and do things, and they left little packages around that they shouldn't have done. And Charlie Rowley found one of them and unfortunately gave it to his girlfriend, Dawn Sturgis, who died. Unfortunately for the Russians, she died in the middle of the World Cup that Russia was trying to hold up as showing, you know, we're brilliant at putting international sport on, let us back in and everything else. And that had completely the opposite effect. So, you know, Vladimir Putin went absolutely apoplectic during that and called the head of the GRU at the time in for a small interview without any coffee. Apparently, as he left the room, he signed a "I'm going on indefinite sick leave" chit and went on sick leave. And 6 months later, they confirmed his death.
That's right.
Through natural causes, of course.
Of course.
Oh my God.
But
Okay.
that's the level of what goes on inside these organizations, and, you know, people need to wake up to the fact that this is going on around the world, folks.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I said before, if you can give someone a tactical problem, something that's right in their face, like we've got at the moment with COVID, then the strategic stuff goes out the window. And I think absolutely Donald Trump capitalizes on that. And I think the Russians capitalize on that, because they, while we're all distracted with Brexit and COVID and everything else, of course, that they're making longer moves. So there's a brilliant analysis. I want to try and lighten it up a little bit from international geopolitics if I can, because next thing I thought I'd ask you both about was this hacking group, the Robin Hood hackers. And I'll just quote you from an article I'm just going to flash up on the screen. It says, a hacking group is donating stolen money to charity in what is seen as a mysterious phase for cybercrime that's puzzling experts in the cybersecurity industry. And apparently these hackers are posting tax receipts and giving away what they make from ransomware. Ian, are you familiar with the story?
Yeah, I've been following this story. It's quite interesting. It could be the I feel bad about making the millions of dollars that they've been making from ransomware blackmail. You know, it may, I really can't see it as being, you know, anything more than a thinly veiled attempt at public relations by a cyber criminal group. You have to keep in mind, you know, back in 2016, Phineas Fisher donated 25 Bitcoin at the time. At the time. So you know, I wonder about these kind of things. I mean, I sincerely hope that the message is received in terms of like what charities need in the UK right now or globally in terms of what the impact of COVID has had. But I don't think our funding model should be based on cyber criminal largesse.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've said one of the charities, Children International, says it will not be keeping the money. They said that if they find that the money has in fact been stolen, they will not be keeping the money. The dark side hackers say they now want to make the world a better place. And they also said, no matter how bad you think our work is, we're pleased to know that we've helped change someone's life. Today we sent the first donations and posted receipts on the dark web so that to prove that they had actually given it away. I mean, in this
I think this is a case of they're scared that people are closing in on them. You know, they've committed the crime, they're going to do the time. Now, if they happen to be based in the UK or they've got assets based in the UK, the Proceeds of Crime Act will come and you deal with them if they get prosecuted in that, and all the individuals that are amongst it. So they may be multimillionaires today. Tomorrow, they will have difficulty signing on because you know, it'll take them a few years before they get out from behind bars. And if they can't do that, if there's unexplained wealth around the UK that's sitting there, the National Crime Agency is focusing very quickly onto unexplained wealth and producing unexplained wealth orders, which basically turn around to individuals and say, we see that you've all of a sudden got a big lump of money in your bank account. Please tell us where it came from and how you got it, and give us some proof. And therefore the burden of proof is then on the individual who's got the money to explain where that's come from. And if they can't, then the National Crime Agency goes, this is brilliant, you haven't been able to tell us, so give us all of it. We recognize that you've got that asset and that asset and that asset, and you've got 3 houses there and 4 houses there. We'll recognize that those are probably part of it as well, and we'll just take everything. By the way, you can appeal and come back and just explain where it's come from. But most people who couldn't explain in the first place can't explain afterwards.
Well, it's said that the cyber criminals use a US-based service called the Giving Block, which is used by non-profits around the world, including Save the Children and the Rainforest Foundation, for example. And the Giving Block has made a statement. They've said, we are an advocate for cryptocurrencies. But, and this, I wondered, again, just quickly, what you thought. It said the fact that they use crypto makes it so much easier for us to catch them, makes it easier, not harder, to catch them.
Yeah, so again, this goes back to the fact that it's not a secret anymore, as it's come out in a number of indictments, that at least within the Five Eyes community, they have the ability to track Bitcoin transactions globally from creation to the individual that's purchasing it and what asset is purchased. I would say that there's an interesting legal test here. So admittedly, by their own admission, they've made millions from ransomware attacks, right? I don't think anyone's going to argue that ransomware is essentially a crime. So the question now is, let's strip away the idea that this is a donation. Because if I make money as a criminal and then I give it to anyone and they know that it was made as a criminal, I think the law is proceeds of crime.
Yeah.
And it's actually against the law to accept stolen goods.
Yeah.
So strip the nuance away. Now, is this a potential, like Phil said, a situation where they are trying to instill some goodwill because the walls may be closing in on them, and they're hoping that a judge would look at this small philanthropic activity as being sympathetic towards the actual millions that they made victimizing small and medium businesses on a global scale. So I would say that's a giant, a giant problem for any business accepting proceeds of crime. And I would say it's also a giant problem for them, because the more noise they make, the more media attention they earn, the big eye of Mordor is going to be looking for them.
I feel, psychological perspective, that it's a very amateurish move.
Yeah, completely.
It makes me wonder about the age of this gang. It really
it could well be. And again, there's a lot of people out there hear of cryptocurrencies and hear Bitcoin, and because it's been associated in the past so much with what's going on in the dark web, they automatically assume that anything that's on the blockchain, anything that's cryptocurrencies is impossible for people to track and all the rest of it. Actually, it's completely the opposite. Yep. One of the beauties of blockchain, and especially public key blockchain, is that everyone that's on the chain can analyze every transaction, and they're immutable. They can't be deleted. They can't be adjusted. They can't. Nothing else can happen. So you've got this audit trail from creation to the latest transaction that can be looked at by anyone that's on the chain and examined forensically in detail. And it's something that, rather than enabling a distrusted network easily used by criminals, actually properly enables a trusted network that can be used to make sure that everything is authenticated the whole way through. And that's why I see blockchain as being a technology of the future as we go forward from an information management perspective.
That was almost everything I wanted to talk to you guys about this week. It was so brilliant. I just want to say one more thing. We had a problem this week in the industry, and everybody sort of weighs us in straight away because of this picture, which I'm going to show now, which is Fatima's next career might be in cyber. She just doesn't know it yet. So maybe if we go to Ian first, what was your views on Fatima in the industry and the poster? Did you think it was as fatuous as everyone made out?
So, it's that the government is in a really tough spot. So I'm not defending it, because I do think it's pretty important to suggest that we'll just retrain the entire arts industry, something that has been around since the Globe Theatre and Shakespeare's time, into cyber or truckers or any other sort of profession. The government is up against it because clearly arts funding is one of the things that relies on an audience to consume the product. Although some roads have been made towards digitization and digital content, the actual industry itself is in danger of disappearing almost entirely from the UK landscape. It will be a long time before opera houses and theater will ever be shown again. And to underscore how serious this is, I believe all of the pantos this year have been cancelled.
But, and Phil, I know you want to come in from an events perspective.
Oh, no, they haven't.
PantoOnline.com.
They're doing it online. I heard that there were 25 pantomimes, and you buy the tickets, they do the performance, and the audience isn't there.
But here's the fact, the residuals, right, of staging a production and doing all of those things, and the behind the scenes and the concessions and all of those things that make a night out in London at the London Theatre or at the London Opera House or the London Concert House. That's that's a thing that has disappeared from the landscape.
Yeah.
And you know, when you deal with professional actors and actresses, you know, there's a heartbreaking story in The Guardian about how these people are now having to make ends meet by delivering parcels because they've spent their entire career, last 25 or 30 years, being actors of stage and movies, and those industries have been hit incredibly bad.
I mean, I'm trying to see the bright side of it, chaps, you know. I mean, Phil,
Yeah.
from an events point of view, I am really seeing the difference now between the events that people try to do sort of June, July, and bring those online, and maybe you see it as a speaker point of view as well. But now, like I say, they're getting slicker, people are getting more used to it. As a speaker, I'm always going to miss that audience and that energy.
Yeah, and I
but
think
it is coming.
Yeah, it is coming. I think the technology that we're using for this and for everything else hasn't caught up with the fact that there needs to be something that is giving more of that live, immersive feeling whenever you're going to events. And it's coming. I notice Apple have bought some interesting companies recently, and they're going to start investing in it heavily because, you know, COVID's here for a long time. Going to the Fatima poster. That was just complete and utter crass naivety by the PR company that'll have looked at it and haven't red teamed the wider messaging that's coming out of it, and B, then whoever signed it off in government to let it out there, because again they haven't thought about the wider implications, and that shows how important it is to start to look at things from a wider perspective. I don't think it was a deliberate slight at the arts industry.
No,
in any way, shape, or form.
That's what they meant, but it was like you say, it was crass and naive. And I mean, when I first saw it, I just thought, well, maybe she's both. That was the thing that went in my head was Fatima. Maybe Fatima already is.
And actually, there's no reason why there's no reason why Fatima. There's no reason why Fatima can't be. And you look, or any actor. That's out there. You look at the majority of actors, and they've got sort of very short periods of time where they're really, really busy, unless you're one of the lucky ones who's in a series or lots of other things. But a lot of time they're unemployed, and they're looking for other things. There's nothing to stop someone in a performing arts profession to have as their primary bow or their secondary bow, it doesn't matter which, a wider infosec career structure that's in there that they could be working on. So it's retrain, I think was the wrong word. If it put train additional skills in there, that would have come out much better.
I just think that, like, when you know the community, and especially like Ian will know as well, you know, the sort of hacker Twitter community, the amount of different skills people have got that comes out sort of arbitrarily on sort of like on a Wednesday evening or something, and someone will be a ninja, like as in certified ninja, or a chef, or it just, I don't see why we have to be so binary about everything, and I think there was that, and then the whole implication that, I think the timing of it, the implication that careers like in the like ballet or acting in the arts are sort of over, I don't think they intended it, but they should have thought about it.
They should have thought about it. And again, this is and it's across government. I think one of the things that government misses across the board is the impact of information and the way information's developed, and how information itself, the way it's presented, the messaging and everything else that's in there is in itself a weapon, and they just haven't got that.
I think, you know, I see it from a different perspective. I think it's a completely deplorable and an abdication of support for a class of people that have been around since, again, Shakespeare's time. And the fact that the government was essentially saying, you're not really worth anything to our society, you should retrain in cybersecurity. So I was deeply offended on behalf of those individuals who have been suffering at the hands of various lockdowns and government regulations with very little support through that period of time.
The timing of it was just appalling, wasn't it, really? But then
I think everything about the campaign was terrible. And you know, I agree with Ian completely. The support that the performing arts has had, and a lot of the live entertainment industries, they don't have the billions behind them that, you know, professional sport has got, especially football. You know, they can survive by themselves without any problems whatsoever. You know, you chop a player or two, that's not going to make any difference. But you know, the value that the performing arts provides out to society, you can't measure it. and it needs to be protected, and it's not being protected like some of the other industries are.
Everybody needs to know that that's going to be there when this is over with, and that's why I just hope that they find a way, they work out a way of getting something online that they can charge for.
Well, it's humanity. Humanity is all about, that's what separates us from other animals. We've got this higher plane, and that's reflected in the arts and in music and in everything else. We lose that at our peril.
Yeah. Well, listen, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the Tinfoil Hat Club Lockdown Diaries. I really appreciate you doing it, and of course, brilliant insight as always. It's a bit grim out there, I guess.